Hey there, hope you all are doing well. Congratulations on making it through the first little chunk of English 112. Glad to have you in class with me this semester. As mentioned in the course overview, we will be dealing with three different academic disciplines this semester: the sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities, and that's the order that we'll be moving in throughout the course. I mainly have set it up this way because I know some of you will be moving on to the 200 level English course, and the work in the humanities that we do at the end of the course will help you transition into that. Also, we'll be learning and using APA format for the sciences and social sciences sections. And I know that that is new for a lot of you. Some of you have some experience with it, many of you don't. So that also lets us have a little return and review to MLA at the end of the course in the humanities section. So we will be getting started first with the sciences. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the disciplines at large and then what the conventions of writing are in the sciences and some of what we'll be doing as we move forward in the course. So when we think about, I'll work backwards. I'll start at the end and work backwards. So when we think about the humanities, we're thinking about human experience and creation, right? We're thinking about history, linguistics, literature, visual and performing arts, philosophy, religion, a lot of the ways that humans have expressed themselves and tried to make sense of what it means to be human, hence humanities. Now, that in mind, there can be some overlap between these disciplines, right? So as you know, as many of you know, I'm sure, history is often considered a social science, depending on how it's being studied. So don't necessarily think of these disciplines as rigid walled categories. A lot of times there's some overlap and there can be some exceptions. So social sciences, anthropology, archaeology, cultural and ethnic studies, economics, gender and sexuality studies, political science, psychology, sociology. These fields examine humans as individuals, humans as groups, how we act and how we interact. And then you get to the natural sciences, the physical world. So this is biology, chemistry, earth science, physics, math, even all of the ways that we have learned the whys of the world, essentially. So we're going to start out in the sciences. And I know that is incredibly exciting for some of you and worrying for some of you. Now, when I talk about science writing, I am not going to be sticking you in a biology lab and asking you to generate a report. But what we are going to do is think about what our experiences are with science writing. So one of the things that I ask you to think about is how you're exposed to scientific information. I get a lot of mine via things like Science Friday on NPR. Sometimes I do some science reading for fun. I'm a nerd that way. I know I'm not alone. I know there's some others of you who do that. But one of the things that we'll be looking at this week and next week is how hard it is for the average person to get good scientific information, which is a timely topic right now, given the coronavirus pandemic. And when I say that, it's not a jab at the scientist and it's not a jab at the reporters necessarily, but we're going to look at some examples and see how sometimes science writing is sensationalized or it's confused or it's muddled for the audience that's getting it. A lot of times we'll get information that's oversimplified or maybe is not explained well enough for us. And that's one of the reasons I really love NPR for Science Friday and things like that, because I find the material pretty accessible. So in thinking about the sciences, let's consider what some of the conventions of science writing are. So when you're examining science writing, one of the things you'll want to consider is the focus, which is not just the topic at large, but how that topic is examined. What angle are they taking? What part of it are they looking at? If probably in your English 111 class, if you were with me, I know this happened, but probably with anyone, there was a discussion of how you get from a subject to a very defined, narrow topic, right? So, the example that I always use when we talk about the research paper in English 111 is that education, really broad topic. Community college education, a little bit narrower. First year college students taking English, much narrower. Why students need to learn APA and MLA in their first year of college, much narrower, right? That's a pretty focused topic. Now, when we think about that particular topic, we also need to think about the angle that we're taking as we look at it. So, you know, the whys, are we looking at this from the student angle, the instructor angle, et cetera? So think about that when you look at science writing. What angle is being taken toward this topic? Of course, if you have experience in science classes, you know that there's typically a research question, a hypothesis that is sought to be proven. And sciences focus on quantitative data. That is not just experiential data, but the actual hard data that can be returned, numeric, so actual hard data that can be returned. When we think about the social sciences and the humanities, a lot of times we are talking about qualitative data, which we will discuss a little bit later. So in scientific writing, there will often be citations of secondary material, so other scientific research that the scientists have consulted in preparing and carrying out their study or experiment. So as for the tone and diction, you'll see that a lot of writers in the natural sciences will use third person because they're seeking to be very objective, right? And the difference between objective and subjective, objective is removed from, subjective is personal take on. But objective writing is very important in the sciences. We know it's important to remain objective. So we'll often see that science writing uses a lot of formal language. That's one of the reasons it can sometimes be off-putting to the typical reader. So if you go and look at these scientific articles, a lot of times they're going to be really hard for the average person to understand. But there are some publications that seek to bridge that gap, which we'll talk about. Documentation guidelines, you'll see APA, you might see CSE, Council of Science Editors, you might see CMS, Chicago Manual of Style. For our purposes in this class, and because there are so many citation styles, we are going to focus on APA because it is very typically used in college courses, psychology, in nursing and other medical classes. APA is the way that folks go. A lot of times you'll see scientific writing organized using what's called MRAD format. MRAD stands for Introduction, Methods, Research, and Discussion. So your introduction, I think, is pretty straightforward. The methods gives a description of how the experiment was performed. Research is the actual data. You may also hear this referred to as results. I refer to it as that when we get into our social science project later this semester. And then the discussion. What does it mean? Why does it matter? Why is it significant or not? And so that organization is how you'll typically see things presented. You will often see an abstract at the beginning, and that goes for a lot of scholarly writing. And an abstract is sort of like a summary, and it's there to let researchers know if they need to continue reading, essentially, so that they're not wasting their time and can see upfront whether this is something they need to give their time to. And there might be a conclusion. So those are the big parts of science writing, the big characteristics. But we're also going to be looking at some less formal science writing, as you will see in our content for this week. Speaking of our content for this week, let me scroll to that tab. I don't want to forget anything, so a lot of times in my videos you'll see me looking over here or looking at sticky notes because I want to make sure I get everything in. So this week, you're asked to have a little introduction to APA style and citation, to complete your library tutorials, and to preview our science writing assignments. Complete your checkpoint like you will every week, do some reading. And one of the readings I asked you to look at for this week is How to Mark a Book by Mortimer Adler. I'm working on a critical reading skills video for my English 111 students, and I'm going to share that with you as well. I really love that article. It's a bit dated. I know that a lot of folks are using electronic text like we are in our class, but I think that a lot of the advice that he gives still holds true. I ask you to skim the APA section of the Little Seagull Handbook. The Little Seagull does a really good job with APA coverage, and I see that I am long-winded today, so I'm going to do a little separate video on APA because I don't want you to have to sit through an incredibly long video. But in the Little Seagull, there's a table of contents on the left that you'll probably see, and you can go there and then scroll through the APA section, and they provide a documentation map that shows you sort of where you can find the information you need for documentation on the original source and then how that information is put together. So I've had some questions about citation already and done some one-on-ones with some of you, which is great. I'm glad that folks are working ahead and are asking questions and getting in touch early in the semester. So if you need some help, please do let me know. I'm glad to walk you through some of this. But I do ask that you look at your source that you pick when we get there. We're not there yet, but when you pick that source, look at it and give the citation a try. Use the example in Little Seagull to help you figure it out. I don't recommend using citation machines, any of the automatic tools. I treat those like a spell check or a grammar check. They're great to use as a tool, but not something you want to rely on. I get a lot of incorrect citations from those. And I mean incorrect start to finish, like incorrect author, the whole thing. And while I'm never going to expect you to memorize APA citation guidelines, I do want you to be able to use these tools. I would never expect you to be able to sit down and cite your APA article, everything the perfect order, all the correct punctuation without consulting a handbook. I can do that for some MLA stuff, but I keep an APA handbook in my desk, and I do a lot of work with APA. So if I can't do it from memory, I would never expect you to, okay? So I know a lot of times people say, man, I really struggle with APA. It's so hard to remember. Use those resources. They're there for you. Use the Little Seagull. Use the Purdue Online Writing Lab. Use our Writing Lab. Ask me questions when you need to. So I ask you to read Carl Zimmer's Advice for Aspiring Science Writers, which I find to be an entertaining article. And from there, you can take your quiz and get started on the reading for next week. I know some of y'all are working ahead. I do have week 3 open, and I'm working to get some more content open for you. I am not entirely an online teacher. I do almost always teach a section or 2 of this course online, but my English 111 classes had to move to synchronous format because of the pandemic, so I'm just a little bit behind, and I apologize for that. I'm usually a bit more on my game than I am at the start of the semester, so your patience is appreciated. Another thing I wanted to mention, a student brought it to my attention, there's an error on the quiz, and I'm working on that, so I'll get that fixed. And if people, nobody will lose any points. Some people may see some extra points show up, so I will check on that. So I'm going to stop there for now, and I'll post a supplemental video addressing APA since we don't have to be there quite yet. That's coming up for next week. I will say just a quick thing about our science writing assignment. This assignment is designed to sort of let you dip your toe into academic writing, let you review some of the skills that you picked up in English 111. I know some folks just took English 111. I know some folks, it's been a while, you know. So I want to make sure that everybody feels good about where they are with the class. So essentially, what I ask you to do is to find an academic article that is related to your intended profession or your field of study, basically something you're interested in, and I leave it wide open. The first thing you're going to do is next week submit the APA citation. I know some of you have jumped on this and have already done it. I'm working to turn around feedback as quickly as I can, so you can certainly get an early start. So read and annotate the article. And when I say annotate, mark that thing up, ask questions, make sure you really understand the article. It's worth noting right here, you don't want to pick an article that is 45 pages long for this assignment, okay? There's not a length requirement on this, so if you pick something on the shorter side, that is okay. I just want you to work with something that interests you. So what I ask you to do is to critique the article and think about what's clear, what's not, what information should have been conveyed a little better, and draft a summary for people who are not part of your field. So essentially what you're doing is reading this, critiquing it, and then representing a short version of the information for the average person. So in doing this, you do want to use APA guidelines. This is our kind of our practice getting to know it assignment. You don't need an abstract. You don't need MRAD. You want to keep it unbiased. You want to keep it objective. So this is really our first assignment to sort of dip our toe in and get into science writing and academic writing and all of that good stuff. So I hope that this is a good assignment for you to get started with as your first real writing assignment for the class. As always, I'm around, and I will be back with an APA video, and as soon as I have my critical reading skills video ready, I'll post that for you all as well. Thanks for your patience and your hard work as we're getting started, and I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.